work, I use she, her pronouns. I'm a bookseller here at Books Are Magic. Before we get started, I did just want to point out some housekeeping things for tonight. First, ask that you keep your mask on at all times. While you're at this event, we will be doing audience Q&As toward the end of the event. We will be doing it raised hand style, so start to give questions now to ask later, and raise your hand when the time comes. After the talk tonight, Eloisa will be signing and personalizing books at the desk near the side door where you came in. We also have additional books for sale available to purchase from my colleague JG in the back. If you are joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we highly encourage you to buy a copy of Fighting is Like a Wife online using the link in the live stream description. Tonight, I'm very humbled to introduce Eloisa Amezcua and Hana Kim, who are here to discuss Eloisa's new collection, Fighting is Like a Wife. In this collection, Eloisa uses stunning visual poetry and borrows direct real-life interviews and sports commentators to chronicle the love story and travel of two-time world boxing champion Bobby Schoolboy Chakun and his first wife, Valerie. Eloisa's dynamic visual style lends itself to the deconstruction of Shakun's life, family, and relationship to the ring. In what Publishers Weekly calls vibrant, this dizzying second collection will be sure to leave you breathless. Eloisa Amezcua's debut collection, From the Inside Quietly, is the inaugural winner of the Shelterbelt Poetry Prize selected by Ada Limon. A MacDowell Fellow, her poems and translations are published in New York Times Magazine, Poetry Magazine, Kenyon Review, Gulf Coast, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, and elsewhere. Eloisa is the founder of Costura Creative. As I mentioned, Hana Kim is sharing space with us tonight to discuss this collection. Hana Kim is the author of If You Leave Me, which was a Booklist Editor's Choice title, and named a book of 2018 by over a dozen publications. A 2022 recipient of the National Book Foundation's 5 Under 35 Award in 2022. Give it up! I love that. Oh, so sweet. A 2022 Creative Capital Award finalist, a 2021 Jerome Hill Artist finalist, and a 2017 Penn Robert J. Dow Short Story Prize winner. She teaches at Columbia University and in the Randolph College MFA program. She is a contributing editor at Apogee in Brooklyn with her family. So, without further delay, everyone, a very warm welcome to Eloisa and Crystal.
Alright, do I take this off for the... Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
I'm really honored to be here to celebrate Eloisa's book. I'm really excited. I have a feeling that many of you are poets, and I'm a prose writer, so the Q&A I feel like will be really fun because it's going to be a lot of me asking questions as a prose writer. But Eloisa first asked me to read a little bit. So I'm going to be reading from the novel I'm working on, which is called The Stone Home, and it's in a reformatory institution in 1980 Korea where home citizens were taken to be reformed, but where actually a lot of abuses occurred. But this excerpt is from a moment of joy and community and creation, because I thought that would be most fitting for a celebration. So all you need to know here is that the narrator's name is Unju, and her mother is about to give birth. And there are a lot of other names. These are the other women and girls in the institution, but I would just suggest focusing on mood. Okay. Dawn. We pushed the extra cots against the wall, a long line of elevators for Amma to roam. She swayed, her nails clawing white paint, and let out a warning sound, a stippled, crackling moan. It's time, he's coming, she said. Above her, a window turned blade blue. We were all awake now, even if we weren't. Nabi ran to get Harmony. It's too early, I said. The inspector will be here in a few hours, Ajima-i protested, prickling and practical. Why today? Ajima Kim sat beside Amma, showed her how to breathe. Don't grit your teeth. I wanted them to leave us alone. I wanted them here. My skin buzzed and I hugged myself, watching Amma rock her hips, humming up to the crest of a wave. Harmony hurried in with blankets, washcloths, buckets. Fill this with water, soak these. Nabi and the Adamanese ran off. Harmony set aside a matchbook, a sewing kit, shears. We might need to break open the kitchen. The inspector, Ajama Pak said, gentler than Ajama Lee. I know, we'll see. Harmony squatted beside Amma. How are you feeling? But I understood the movement of her contractions now, the upward climb and release. Wait, I said. Harmony counted. 60 seconds, 4 minutes apart. This will be quick. I was quick too. A fierce sort of pride swelling in me. Amma had brought me into the world this way. At the next rest, Amma pulled off her underwear. The dark hairs matted with blood. Another, she said, and as if summoned, her moaning began. Harmony squeezing her hips, time stretching thin by Amma's ringing voice. When the pain released, she leaned against the pillow. Good girl, Harmony soothed, you're in control. I want to help, I said. She moved to one side. You push the other hip, we'll work together. We thrust our palms against her, squeezing toward the center of the womb, and Amma turned inward, a hibiscus petaling closed. The others sat around, a half-moon of voices and hands, and then a yelp of surprise, a gush between our legs, a valve released, splashing my knees. It's clear. Mina, you take over so I can check her, Harmony said. My friend, across from me, a quick, wondrous smile. The heels of our palms against Amma's flesh, our bodies swinging to the same clock. Harmony beside us, between my mother's legs, fingers reaching up, and you're close, Kyungo, you'll be able to push soon. Shower. Amma's first words in hours. Water. We stripped down, all of us fleshed and naked as the our own arrival, wide-hipped with hanging breasts and brown nipples, skeletal not yet budding, some of us hairy and some of us smooth. We walked to the bathroom together. The Ajamas, Adamanis, Nabi, Mina, Harmony, me, Amma. We didn't need everyone, but we were here. Amma's hard, low belly, a dark line running down her stomach like her thighs stained red. She was beautiful. She grabbed the first sink and sank into a squat. Mina and I at her sides, ready to press, her knees crackling against white tile. Nabi, you stand by her head, make sure she sips when she can. Everyone else fill more buckets. Harmony was our director, our midwife, our bringer of life. They formed a line. With every pause, a waterfall of heat across Amma's shoulders, down her spine. Again and again, there was only movement and sound, my arms trembling from the steady pushing, our bodies sticky with sweat, condensation, anticipation, a new moan rocking high and higher, a bird swooping the sky. It's time, I feel him, Amma said, I know. At the next hold, Harmony pried Amma's fingers from the sink and helped her over to the showers. I settled against the tile, opened my legs. Amma nestled her back against my chest, and I rounded myself, making a home. I clasped her hands. She propped her thighs, and then a bird flew out of her again, soaring up to the ceiling, circling our heads. You're ready now, Harmony said. Follow the urge. Amma leaned back and opened her mouth, a scream, primal and unleashed, jolting away from us all, echoing off the tile. Concentrate on your strength, Kyungo. Keep everything loose. You can do this. We're here. You're in control. She closed her eyes. The bird transformed into a bear, that deep, dark growl, all musk and earth, burrowing, and then, again, a rest. Breathe, Harmony said. Push when you feel that pressure. I want to see, Amma said. Witness. Nabi brought a small mirror, angled it just so, and Amma bore down a bare woman, all flesh and body, our hearts connected, and Unya, the origin of our world. There between her legs, a pulsing chestnut, a thatch of hair, widening and widening and widening. One more, Kyungo, one more and you're done. A scream, a concentration, her fingers squeezing mine. The sky rent open, blue and light and air and waves. I can't, she cried. You can, you have to. I whispered into her ear. She was my mother and she was all powerful. She was witness and we were here. She opened her eyes. There, between your legs, look at that. One more, yes, and there, a face, a body, an arm raised in power, ready to scramble into our world. Oh, a baby on her chest, slathered in white, eyes closed, not yet screaming, Ummah shaking. It's a girl. A girl, a girl, a girl, a thick, pulsing cord, an echo of pain, another push, a placenta of red, an organ as thick and large and beating as any heart. My girls. Thank you. And now for Eloisa.
I was really hoping Crystal would read that section because I heard her read it over the Christmas break.
Yeah.
Was it New Year's Day?
New Year's
maybe?
Day. And this is my second time reading it.
I know. And it was so good. And I was, trying to think of who I wanted to be in conversation with. And I was like, Crystal. And then in my mind, I was like, I hope she reads that section from her new book. I'm just going to read straight through a few poems. And this is just going to play so you don't watch me read, essentially. So you can go ahead, yeah. Excerpts from a post-fight interview. Bobby Chacon lives for tomorrow. Answer. I guess it's just the instincts of athletes against one another, that comes into the picture, but I'm just a friendly guy. I ain't got nothing against not a single person, except myself, maybe. Answer. Being the oldest in the family, I was a little restless. I got restless and joined the gangs. I wasn't one of the biggest members, so I had to prove that just the way I was, I had that thing where I had to be one of the best. Answer. Yes, I should have. Answer. There I was at 31 years old. How can a person that old throw that many punches? Answer. I think it happened from that. The only thing in the world I was afraid of was losing her. Answer. And she had enough of me and she said, that's it, promise. And I told her I couldn't keep that promise. Answer. She did. That's exactly what she thought. Answer. That's right. I didn't care. I mean, I had everything I needed and then I lost it. Answer. I've got a new life and everything's going real good right now, and this is what I wanted. Now I've got to go through with my career because she's gone. Answer. You give up, you're out of the ball game. I don't give up. Answer. This boxing is going to be just like another marriage to me. Valerie. Because he keeps a knife in his pocket, his hands 2 fists. She hears he's used them in the lot behind the football field. He'll hit anyone who crosses him. Friends say she ought to see him fight. A boy smiling, he smiles when he strikes. She dreams of a kiss. The only fault she's found in him is how he runs towards everything she fears. Fighting is like a wife. It's with you all the time. Like a wife, it will know if you don't treat it right. But if you treat it right, it can be good. Like a wife, it's with you all the time. You treat her right. You know if you don't treat her right, a wife can't be good all the time. Like fighting, like her. Like a wife, the time you don't treat her right can be all the time. A wife can be good if fighting can be good all the time. You can fight the wife all the time. You can treat her right. If you don't treat her right, you will know. It can be good. Fighting, it's good. Good like her. Valerie. Baby touch, she touches her son, sleeping belly, smooth and warm. Just eaten, ate from her breasts, the weight of mothering leaves slowly. Her body, he eats and she hears in his throat a delicate swallow. Beautiful song, stain leaking her body, the blood still pooling between her legs. rosy face, smiling baby in sleep she made and unmakes. She whispers into thin folds, little ears. Morning sun, the window, she hears the breeze and runs her fingers across his head, close to hers. Translucent skin covered in dark, fine hair, just like his father's. What makes a person so small, so happy? It is a mere animal fear that can only ask God to keep life in her. Round 7. A hit to the chin and you see the black lights. Then you're driving through the mall in San Fernando. You think, where have I been? And open your eyes to the referee counting slow as honey glides through a jar. 5, 6, 7. His voice echoes to no one but you. You have to get up. The round's not over and you've got a thick skull. Learned early on you could take a punch, absorb a man's fist in the brow or gut, but you rise. Your legs stand still. You beg your feet to dance their way away, heavy hands to shield your face as the challenger charges towards you, like a tiger tasting blood. Valerie. She lets a week go by, the hours go by. What if she leaves the pills? There is a struggle in her mind, a gun. She finds that she is not there. She doesn't know where there is the pills. She doesn't know where she is a gun. What has love done for her? What if she leaves, finds herself there? What has love done? The pills, there is struggle, there in her heart, there a gun. What love has done for her? She finds she isn't in her mind. The pills, there, struggle. If she leaves, a month goes by, the hours go. She leaves in her heart a holy feeling. Round 10. You call it love as you try to punch holes through each other in the kitchen. No bell to force you to your corners. Besides her eyes, they'd follow you around any room. This obsession, a fear she doesn't have a name for. In your corner of the kitchen, she's a force unlike any. Her voice rising, gradual as a balloon released into air. Her fear, her obsession, a name she doesn't know yet. You're out of practice for weeks. You haven't been a husband to anybody. Your voice rises and gradually, like a balloon releasing air, you see her body tense, waiting for a counter from a husband out of practice. For weeks you've been with another woman who asks where it hurts the most when you tense your body, waiting for a counter in the ring. Tonight, you trade good punches near the end where it hurts the most. You know that no other woman would be standing at the finish. She won't let up in the ring tonight. She trades a good punch at the end. Her dark eyes, how they follow you in this room. She won't let up. She's standing at the finish. Both of you still punching holes through each other and calling it love. Predicament. I've done a lot of fighting from Inglewood to Sacramento. I knocked out the first guys I faced in 2 rounds or less, but the chin don't hurt. Val, she's tired of being a boxer's wife. She's always on me about it. The bruises and the cuts and boxing. I have to get it out of my blood. I hope she doesn't get mad at me. I know she won't. I know she won't get mad at me. I hope she doesn't. I have to get it out of my blood. And boxing, the bruises and the cuts, she's always on me about it. Val, she's tired of being a boxer's wife, but the chin don't hurt. In 2 rounds or less, I knocked out the first guys I faced from Inglewood to Sacramento. I've done a lot of fighting. She wanted love. She thought no one loved her. She wanted me to sit down and love her. She wanted me to love her. She loved me and she wanted me. She wanted love to sit down. She loved love and she thought no one loved love. Thought no one thought love. She wanted no one and she loved no one and she thought she wanted me to sit down and love her. Love her. Love her. Love. On March 15, 1982, Valerie Chacon committed suicide inside of her home in Palermo, California. On March 16, 1982, Bobby Chacon fought Salvador Ugalde for $6,000, winning by technical knockout in 3 rounds. Spoiler alert. Should have said that before, but thanks. I just have 2 more. Round 14. You want to forget you. You will forget you. You start to forget you. You can't help but forget you. You've begun to forget you. You started to forget you. You forget what you've forgotten of you. You're forgetting you. You forgot you. You want to forget you. You will forget you. You start to forget you. You can't help but forget you. You've begun to forget you. You started to forget you. You forget what you've forgotten of you. You're forgetting you. You forgot you. You want to forget you, you will forget you. You start to forget you, you can't help but forget you. You've begun to forget you, you started to forget you. You forget what you've forgotten of you. You're forgetting you, you forgot you. You want to forget you, you will forget you. You start to forget you. You can't help but forget you. You've begun to forget you. You started to forget you. You forget what you've forgotten of you. You're forgetting you. You forgot you. Valerie. She leaves slowly, her body, a delicate song. Her body she unmakes, whispers into the breeze, like a small god. Thanks. I guess we're gonna chat now.
Yeah.
About crystals.
No.
Birdseed.
Wasn't that so good? Oh my gosh. Hi everybody. How's everybody doing? Good. Can we have another round of applause? I'm really excited to talk about this book because, as I said, I'm a prose writer, but I love reading poetry, and I'm just very curious about the construction of poems. But I wanted to start first because this book traces the relationship between Bobby and Valerie, and I'm curious, what was the inspiration there? What made you want to write a whole book about their relationship?
So I actually started writing poems about boxing that were non-specific. In the summer of 2016.
Okay, that's a long time.
Yeah, was it? Yeah, 2016. And then I kind of wasn't going anywhere, and I was like, okay, whatever, on to the next thing. And then, sadly, Chacon died. And I was listening to a retrospective of his life, and they offhand mentioned the tragedy of Valerie committing suicide. And the more research I did, the less I found of her. There are, I think, 3 or 4 direct quotes, and all in newspapers, none on video. But there's a lot of tape of him saying, she died because I wouldn't quit, and just really sticking to that story. And it just didn't feel sufficient. So I just became obsessed with what could have happened there, or what happened, and just how they got there.
Yeah,
I think.
So it made you want to reconstruct through poetry.
Yeah, and also in the research, he just says some of the craziest things, like fighting is like a wife.
Yeah.
So the title poem is the first poem I wrote for the book. Because I was so obsessed with like his logic and how roundabout it. He's just like, it makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense at all. Like it makes sense to him, and so I was trying to make it make sense to myself.
Yeah. So when you found out about Bobby and Valerie, did you think like, I have a book here, or is that how you work or poets work?
I don't know. No. I don't know. No. I didn't think I have a book, but I did start playing with his own language. And I found myself wanting to do it more and more.
And there's a lot of his own lines throughout.
So all of the poems that are not titled Round or Valerie are Bobby's own words.
That must have been so tricky. And fun?
It was fun. It was fun. It was fun because I was like, well, someone already did the writing.
Yeah.
So like I kind of just get to play and like I gave myself rules and then stuck to them.
That's so cool.
And like I could only use the direct quote. I couldn't change verb tenses. And then I could only use the words within the quote reordered.
That sounds so difficult, doesn't it? It's like a puzzle. So this is
Yeah.
for all of the poems that are not labeled Round or
Valerie.
And that's a lot of poems.
It is a lot of them. Because he says a lot of really crazy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, like there was a line that you said about this boxing's gonna be
Like another marriage to me.
Which is frightening when you think about his marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was married twice after that.
Oh wow.
Too, after Valerie.
That's tough.
Yeah, very, very quickly.
So what was the research process like?
A lot of YouTube videos. So most old fighting footage and like pre and post fight interviews only exist on YouTube. They're like not housed anywhere. So gave a lot of time to shout out to, I don't know, Bob in Wisconsin who's like uploading these fights illegally. Like I don't know, but thank you. So it was a lot of YouTube and then a lot of like, a friend worked at a library, so I was like, can you look through like newspaper clippings for this name? So just like gathering all the clippings that I could and news articles, magazine articles, and then a lot of fight footage, which was fun.
Yeah. You said you were already interested in boxing.
Yeah. So I grew up watching boxing with my dad and my parents, and so that part was like felt normal. I think.
I'm curious, how do you know when a poem is done?
I feel like there are people here who could answer that better than me. Ron? No, okay.
Is it like, well, with these parameters, are you saying I'm only going to use quotes from this one interview?
Or like I'm going to piece together quotes from like a few different interviews and like word them differently. I don't know. I think when I couldn't change anything, when I was like, I played as much as I could and I just can't think of anything to change. But also, I don't know if I want to say this on the record since this is being recorded, but I'm going to say it. I think it was maybe easier because I was working with someone else's words. And so like it allowed me to like to play and try to do something interesting without having to like, I took some of the pressure off of having to decide when it's done.
That makes sense.
And the narrative, like the larger narrative of the project helped too, because I'm not trying to say everything in this one poem. I'm just trying to say enough to get to the next part of the story.
Yeah. And there's a narrative arc already that you
exactly.
have
There's like there's a set timeline of their lives together.
I don't know if you guys have read it, or have read it yet, or have the copies, but I was really interested in form and the way that there are so many different forms, like Good Game of Catch and where's this? As someone who just writes prose, this just boggles my mind. Blood, and then Bobby versus Valerie. So I'm very curious, and I wanted to just hear your thoughts about form, the facts, and just how do these shapes and forms come to you?
So most of the poems that are in the interesting form are Bobby's poems, like they're in his voice.
Right.
And so some of it had to do with, I'm thinking like particularly of the facts, both of those. The quote of his that I used for those are like very circuitous, is that the word, in logic. And so it felt like it just, like you can kind of pick anywhere to start and it makes sense. And so when I was like thinking of those words and like how am I gonna put them on the page for this poem, like the circle just made sense.
Yeah. Right. Because you can't really read it from any of these phrases.
Right. And then for like good game of catch, it was like, you know, it's a game, right? So I kind of want it to look like a sort of like game, but like choose your own adventure puzzle. So a lot of it was like I was taught, and it was kind of like drilled into me when I was first writing poetry, that like form and content always have to be in conversation with each other. And I don't think I allowed myself to do that with my own writing as much because I was so aware of the content, right? Which like I'm the content. And so it was easier to do that because I wasn't the content. So now it's just like play, like the content's done, have fun with the form.
That's interesting. Okay, that's so interesting. And I'm just fascinated. I love this one because I read it like all the different ways. And I guess what I find so impressive is that there's meaning in all the different ways. So there's a precision there, but it's also like making a puzzle. And I think that's
I like puzzles.
Seems very satisfying, you know. I wanted to talk about the structure of the book too. When you were writing these poems, because there's a ton in here, did you at some point realize I'm writing a book and now I need to write them chronologically, or how did they come about?
Yeah, so the Bobby poems all came first, and I was like, well, this doesn't make sense without the narrative. And so that's where like the third, or they're in second person, but the round poems came in as like sort of the timekeeper and the like mover forward of narrative and timeline. So there was a time, you know, like I got to about 3/4 of the way done with the book, and then I matched the poems up to the timeline, and I was so off.
What do you mean by that?
Like, I think at that point I had written like 10 of the round poems, and like what's round 10 in the book was first published as round 4. So like I was like, I really, what direction is that? I don't know. I really focused on like one part of the narrative timeline and really wrote into that, and then was like, oh my god, I'm so off in terms of like the larger. So then I had to go back and try to like plug the narrative events into it.
Like fill in the gaps.
Yes, and like move everything over so that she doesn't die on page 2. I mean, she does, but like I had to build up to that.
Yeah. And then when did the Valerie poems enter?
Those I rewrote like 6 or 7 times, like in their entirety. And I kept switching from like first, second, third person because it all just felt wrong. But I knew I needed her voice. I was like, this isn't a book without her in it. And so those were the last to be put in and finished.
And you worked on those as a group.
Yeah.
And why was that? Just for the
So-
emotional arc, or?
Yeah, I think I wanted consistency in the voice, and so I had to like remove them from his voice specifically, and not use her voice to move forward the narrative. Like I didn't want her to be like a tool for the narrative. So I'd like pulled those out and just did those. And then like I also wanted to have fun with them, which sounds really terrible because of like what happened, but
Writers. That's what.
yeah. So they're like 1 through 12, and then 12 to 1 erasures.
I was gonna ask about that. I was gonna ask because I noticed the erasures, and then I was wondering, when did you realize that that's how you wanted to kind of create the form of Valerie's stories? And I think it really reflects her mental state so well.
So I had Valerie's voice leaving the manuscript when she commits suicide.
Okay.
Like first pass, and I kind of kept it that way until the very last round of edits, when my editor, the incredible Erica Stevens, was like, go back and rewrite all of these. I was like, okay. And I knew I had to. She was like, go back and try these again. And I think at that point there were maybe like 14 Valerie poems. So I redid the 12 and then was like, hold on. And started doing erasures of them that I thought I was going to plug in for the 12. And I was like, oh no, her voice needs to extend to the end, even though she's like no longer present.
Yeah. And I think that works so well because the second half is erasure, we kind of feel her presence, and it's like,
and that's what I wanted. Yeah,
presence.
I was like, she needs to be a ghost. She can't leave.
Yeah, and we need her there to reflect Bobby's psychology.
And like in the video, there's clips of old Bobby, which by the way, those clips are from 12 years before he died. So like he lived 12 years after that, but he's still talking about her.
Yeah.
He's still like really obsessed with her in his life. And so that kind of like pushed me to be like, no, she's still here even though she's gone.
I thought the erasure poems were a really cool way to make that happen.
Thanks.
Yeah. Do we have more time, right? A little bit? Yeah. I wanted to ask about I wanted to ask about rhythm because as you guys were hearing, there's so much rhythm in the poems, especially Fighting is Like a Wife, and then the poem that I really love that you read is Predicament, because it's what is it, where like the lines go like this and then they flip. What is that called? Something,
It's like, what's it called, Professor?
The lines go from like 1 to 10 and then 10 to 1, so it's the same
We
lines.
don't know. Palindrome.
Which I just
Right?
think
Is that
so
the word? That's like Hana. Is that what that is? Okay. So it's like a palindrome-ish thing.
It's so cool.
Race car.
Race car?
Yeah, it's a palindrome. R-A-C-E.
Oh, okay.
C-A-R. Race car.
Cool. So I wanted to ask you about rhythm.
Yes.
Rhythm in like the palindromic sense, but also there are a lot of the poems that you read and throughout that creates this like hypnotic, mesmerizing feeling in the reader. And I think a lot of it is through rhythm and repetition. So I was curious, is that a natural way that you write, or is it specifically for this book that you found that voice?
I mean, I think specific to this book, like repetition was very important because of its importance in boxing. There's like, 6 punches the fighter uses, and they'll like set them into like, what's the word? Yeah, so they'll just like use the same punches or their little, oh my god, what's the word? Combinations. And so that felt very important to like have that sense of like, almost like a lulling of just like, this is just kind of what you do, and it's a little bit mechanical, but you're working within the rules, right, and the like tools that you have.
Yeah.
Which a boxer is like those 6 punches.
Yes, and I think that I just love the effect that it had on me as I was reading through the whole book, because we have these different voices, we have the different forms, but I feel like they're connected through this sense, this like mesmerizing tone of voice that I found really hypnotic. And Eloisa is one of the first poet who told me like you need to read the poems aloud because I like to read poetry before I write, and so I read your whole book aloud, and it creates such an
It changes everything.
Yes, it really does.
Yes.
So
Not for my book. In
It's
general.
just
Reading out loud.
This one really does.
But reading anything out loud, yeah.
Yeah, and it really, I mean, not novels. It would take.
Oh, I read no.
It
If
would
I'm
take
alone,
forever.
if I'm alone, I'll read them out loud.
That would take forever.
I have terrible reading comprehension, so it's like forces me to know what's happening.
But this, I just found it like such a experience, and I think that as a poetry collection, there are some where each like there's certain poems that really impact you, but I don't always see the narrative arc throughout, and I really felt that here.
Thanks.
And I thought that was such an incredible accomplishment.
Thanks.
Yeah. I feel like we need to move to Q&A. So I will just end there by saying that this is such a beautiful book and I loved it so much.
Thank you.
And we will now open up to questions. And I'll repeat the questions for the audience. Question.
Or don't ask anything.
It always takes like 5 seconds for people to warm up and get the courage. Yes.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for this book because it's just listening to you read these the poems and just in following along, I was like, oh wow, like this is I think you're so right that in terms of collections, this is amongst one of the ones that you're in it for the whole ride.
Yes.
And that's awesome. And I think like in terms of boxing and poetry, like what other collections of poetry do you see this in conversation with? Like I know for example Adrian Matika's The Big Smoke is one, but like are there others that like because this is so like interesting, like now it gets one thinking, oh like all these athletes and these superstars and all the stories or the things that they say, like those outrageous things, like it means something. And the fact that you went for digging the story and came out with this incredible collection, like I don't know, I think that's pretty amazing.
It's so cool. I'm gonna just repeat the question for the audience, and I can't say all of that,
I know.
but this is an incredible collection. Amazing art. And then in terms of other poetry collections about boxing and athletes, like what is this book in conversation with?
There's a really great anthology called Perfect in Their Art about boxing poetry from Homer to when it came out, which is like the early 2000s, I think. But so that has like specific poems about boxing. So there's like Elizabeth Alexander, and there's like the Kim Adenizio, really beautiful poem where they're like fighting in front of the refrigerator. There's like the ancient Greek poems about boxing. So that's like, that anthology felt like gave me permission, right? That I was like really leaning into the story and that it would like be okay because people had done it before. I wasn't doing anything super groundbreaking, which felt very comforting. And then, The Big Smoke was a really important book for this book, and I was very fortunate to be at Vermont Studio Center, and I found out like a week before I got there that Adrian was going to be the visiting writer, and it was like I had written maybe 3 poems for the book so far. So that was really important too, just like getting to talk to him about his experience writing The Big Smoke. And then like Apocalyptic Swing by Gabrielle Calvo-Carassi. That one's more like about Americana, but it's very violent in a way that I think is really striking, pun intended. And Lead Belly by Taimba Jess was just like, in terms of persona and like creating a narrative throughout an entire book, while also playing with form in very like interesting ways. That book was really important. So not boxing specific, but like historical researched sort of books. Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful answer. Now I need to read all of those.
They're fun.
Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
When I was reading the collection, which again I'm gonna repeat, but it was so beautiful. It also really did leave me breathless. And I guess my question is more as advisory from the both of you. Really, when you're writing about stuff that's so intimate and you want to stay true and honoring the voices, and essentially almost kind of, you know, making up this voice for Valerie, kind of filling the blanks where there's nothing there. As a writer, when you get to that emotional state, what are the next steps in order to kind of remember that you're outside of it and that this is really not in any connection to you? And how do you stay true to the voice you're trying to the story really that you're trying to portray without making it seem, you know, also kind of unrealistic, or that you're making fun of it in any way, or you're making light of it in any way?
That's a great question. I will repeat it. This is an amazing book. And when you are writing about real people or real events, how do you stay true to that voice and capture that experience in like an authentic and humble way?
She asked both of us.
But it's your
I think for me it was really important to remember that Valerie was a real person. There are many aspects of Valerie's life that I have no experience with. I've never been married. I don't have children. She had brothers, 2 brothers. I have sisters, you know, so there are like certain aspects of her life that I couldn't, like, inject myself into her life. But there are other parts of her life that I do have experience with, right? Like, I've been in relationships, I've been in love, I've been heartbroken, I've experienced joy, you know, and I think it was important to remember that while I may not be able to be like factual in her poems in terms of like what actually happened in her life, if I could like stay true to the emotional part of what I was trying to access of her life, there are similarities, right? Or there are experiences that we both had or have had, and like sticking with that, right? That like I'm not trying to write her biography. I'm not trying to write a memoir as her. I'm just trying to understand and complicate their story by like feeling my way through it. Yeah.
Am I supposed to answer?
Yeah, I want to know what you.
I think that you expressed it really well, where it's about the emotion and tapping into what you know can be transferred across characters. And then because I write in fiction, I have that veil too. So I am writing about that institution that my novel is set in. There were institutions like that in Korea, and I spoke to someone who was in one of those institutions, but I made up an institution because I didn't want to presume that I knew the experience of being in the one that he was in.
Yeah.
So I think with fiction you have that you're able to like move parallel, and in that way capture the experience while not maybe encroaching on their actual experience. But I think that when you were saying about the emotion, and
I think that's why in the end I went with third person, she, because I knew I could not do an I, and I didn't want to do a you. I didn't want to be like talking to or like telling her about herself, right? So the she felt like a distant enough place where I could still speak emotionally.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's very thoughtful to do that. I think think it's very respectful.
Yeah.
I don't know. Other questions? Maybe one more.
Does anyone have a comment? More of a comment than a question?
I asked a question. In the back, I was looking at all the citations.
Yeah.
Of the Sports Illustrated and New York Times stories. Were there things going back now, 40 years later, that things that you think that they got wrong in retrospect or that they got right in retrospect? How has time changed how you view these stories?
Okay. So
In terms of the media?
That and also just like you're engaging with the story so closely.
So the question was, looking at the citations, there are a lot of articles, and in reading them now, many years later, how much, like, what do you think has changed,
And
or have gotten wrong?
And now that you're engaged with the story so closely, how do you view those in retrospect, and
Now
how do
that-
they engage with this text? too?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, this is still true, I think, of media and journalism and the grand, but it has gotten better. Just the misogyny is like really loose. Like it's everywhere. Just like the fact that they kept taking Bobby at his word, right? About this is why she did it. Because I wouldn't quit. It's just like very eye-centered, and it felt like no one pressed him on it, and no one pressed her family on, right? Like there's just they kind of just accepted his word as what was going to be the narrative and left it at that. Whereas I think now that wouldn't be the end of the story. Yeah. I think that the funny thing is though, reading those articles and stuff, which are like 40 years old, they didn't feel old. Like it's stuff that's, I don't know, violence is so like, we come back to it literally every day. And so that was also kind of, and the spectacle of violence, like personal, athletic, right, like social, all of it. So in that way, it didn't feel like a lot has changed, right? Like we're still reading articles about people's personal lives and the violent things that happen in their, right? Like today I was reading the Rolling Stone, like update on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, right? Like we're just kind of obsessed with it. And so that was very interesting that like, we haven't changed much as a community, and that, like I don't know if that I imagine in ancient Greece people were like the Goss was about who beat who, right? Like people beating each other. Like I think it's just how we function as animals.
Yeah, I think that's true.
We're obsessed with it. Yeah.
Yes,
Anyways.
last question.
I was wondering, has your experience of interacting with this material on such a personal level for so long, you said you began writing in 2016 kind of general boxing poems. I'm not sure how much you engage with the sport now outside of childhood, but has it changed the way you watch boxing? Has it changed or led you to seek out information on the backstories of other people who might have watched kind of at face value before? How's it changed your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I've sorry.
For the audience, since you've been working with this material for so long and you are so close to it, has this changed your experience of watching boxing now? Does it make you want to look into the backstory, or does it just change your relationship to the sport now?
I'm so nosy that like I can't, like before I even started writing this book, I've always been the person who's like watching a basketball game or a boxing match or football, and I Google someone on the field or someone in the ring because I just want to know about them. I'm just nosy like that. I want to see the personal life section of the Wikipedia page. Like I think I'm so curious as to like how people got where they got, and I want to know what led them there. And sometimes it's just like, I don't know, they went to a tennis academy and then became the #1 tennis player in the world. It's like, okay, great, that's kind of really boring. Give me some juice. But I think boxers, you know, there's a reason there are so many boxing movies and that they're like so popular and historical. And so I think there is a very specific kind of person that goes into boxing, and so the backstories for me have always been like super interesting and fascinating, because it takes a very particular kind of person to be like, I'm gonna get beat up for a living, to try to like better my life. I'm gonna get hit in the head over and over, right? Like for that to be your way out of wherever you're coming from is a very there's a lot there, and I think that's why we, like art and media kind of focuses on those stories of like individual sport, and boxing specifically because it's so violent. So yeah, I'm just nosy, and I look up all the backstories. I want to know everything.
It's good for writing.
And just for,
Personal
having the goss that no one cares about.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is a beautiful book.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pop back in here. Hello everyone. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much everyone. Thank you Crystal and Eloisa for such a wonderful conversation. Again, as a short reminder, Eloisa will be signing at the back desk, which is also going to be our exit door. You can purchase additional copies of Fighting is Like a Wife, highly recommend, at the signing desk, as well as Crystal's book, If You Leave Me, highly recommend.
It's so good. Crystal is one of 5 writers under 35 in the world. In the world. Just kidding. She's one of the best writers under 35.
You heard it here, folks. And for those of us who are still on YouTube, you can find the link to purchase the books in the description as well. That is all from me, so thank you again to all of you. Please join me in giving Eloisa and Chris another round of applause.